What's up, everyone? It's your boy Bryce with 510 Visuals, and we back like that ugly piece of bread that don't nobody want to eat. Today we're going to be talking about adding depth to flat lighting on the face in Photoshop.
No more Mr. Nice Guy, but a little Mr. Nice Guy will be nice guys. Surfing and slanging, I'm staying with a pipeline, left-handed. So I'm thinking in my right mind, doing it for a minute, but waiting for the right time. Spit that hit. Turn the day into nighttime. It's a stupid question to ask me if I might grind. Dopest on the market, spark it, trying, I'm not lying. I could chug you, 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 I could chug you.
Before we get started, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. It's the greatest thing you can do to support your boy. All right, let's get it. All right, lighting can be tricky, but fear not. I will show you how to bring shape and dimension to any face with this simple technique. Now, for this tutorial, I'll be using a drawing tablet, but you can use your mouse as well. I'll be using the XP Pen Artist 24 Pro drawing tablet. The link for it is in the description. My favorite way to bring some dimension to the face is using the curves adjustment layer. There's several different ways that you can do this, but I found this to be much faster and easier, especially for someone that is just getting started. The goal here is to make the face look three-dimensional and add some depth. Got this lovely photo of my friend Olivia that we're going to use today. Single light setup, it's camera left. So I've already got some depth to it, but I really want to add some more. If you take a look at some of my work, you can see the exaggerated depth that I use in my work, and this is the technique that I use for it. Planning. So planning for this technique is something I used to do every single time, and it helped me to get so fast at the technique I no longer need to plan for it before using it. We've all seen it. The makeup artist laying down highlights and shadows and then blending it all together. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to start by making a new layer, and we're going to name it planning. We name our layers because we're not lazy bums. Next, we're going to hit B for brush to bring up our brush tool, and we're going to come over here and pick a color like a bright green. We'll use that for our highlights. Make sure this brush is nice and soft. I'm down to about 10% on hardness. And we're going to hit what's called the T-zone. So your T-zone is right here on your forehead, down the nose, across the cheeks. Now you can get as detailed as you want, but for the sake of the video, we're gonna stop right here. Over the years, I've actually been watching a ton of makeup videos to learn how they do it in their process so that I can apply the same principles to Photoshop. All right, let's pick a different color like a pink, and we'll lay down our shadows. All right, shadows are a little bit easier. You're just gonna surround your highlights and look for the darker tones in your photo. Here on the forehead, we're gonna hit the temple. We're gonna go just below the cheeks. We're gonna go either side of the nose. One other trick I like to do is take a lap all the way around the face. All right, there we go. There is our planning stage. Now we're gonna wanna keep this layer on top so we can refer to it. So make sure any layers that we create after this, we make sure that this layer is above them. Next, we're gonna come down here to our layer adjustment menu. We're gonna make two curve layers. We're gonna move our planning layer up to the top. We're gonna name our first curves layer highlights. And the other one shadows. Select your highlights, go to your graph, make a point, and drag it up. Now we're exaggerating these highlights and these shadows just so we can see them. We're gonna blend them in with a combination of the opacity slider and Gaussian blur. Next, we're gonna hit Command I to invert our layer mask. Then we're gonna come down to shadows. We're gonna do the same thing, except for we're gonna grab low. We're gonna drag down, Command and Control I to invert. Next, let's turn off our planning layer just for a second. Now, I like to start with the shadows. They're a little bit easier to see on your images. So we're gonna start there. Make sure that you have your shadows layer selected and that you're on your layer mask. We're gonna grab our brush again, make sure that we're painting with white. And we're gonna come in, and the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go around the outside of the face. Now, when you're selecting your brush size, your brush doesn't have to be extremely large. When we blur this, it's gonna feather out everything, so you don't wanna fill in every single area of your shadow. So, say like we wanna work right here on the temple. We don't wanna paint on the temple like this. We don't need to do that, because when we add our blur, it's actually gonna blend in and fade a lot easier. So, we're gonna Command Z, get rid of that, and we're actually just gonna fill in the temple like that, just a little bit. We're gonna go on the opposite side. I'm gonna go right here below the cheeks and on the outside of the nose. If you turn our planning layer on, you can see that's exactly where we had our pink guidelines at. I'll turn that off. Next, we're gonna go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. All right, so these numbers are gonna be different every time. So just take your time and add to taste. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep bringing the slider up. See how that's starting to blur out our brush strokes? Now right there, you would think that you would wanna stop, but we don't. We wanna keep going just a little bit more, get that smoother transaction. Let's try like 50. Cool, there it is. So we're gonna turn our preview off, turn it back on. You can see how it really like feathered out those thin brush strokes that we had earlier. All right, let's hit OK. Here's before, here's after. As you can see, we've already added some depth to the photo just by doing that. Now it's over the top, but we're not worried about that right now. Let's turn our shadows layer off for a second and work on our highlights. So let's select our highlights layer, make sure you're on your mask. We can turn our planning layer back on so we can see it, and we just want to hit these greeny areas. So same thing. Down the nose, above the cheeks. Let's turn planning off. There we go. And again, you can get as detailed as you want to, but for the sake of the video, we're just gonna stop right there. We're gonna head back up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. We'll start this thing all the way down at the bottom. Now, your Gaussian Blur is gonna be different for your highlights than it is for your shadows. For some reason, I tend to not blur my highlights as hard as I do my shadows. So make sure that you're not just entering the same number and that you're paying attention to your details. So let's start moving up. Let's try around 40. That looks good. Let's hit OK. Let's bring back our shadows. So as you can see, it's looking pretty wild, but we're gonna start blending this all in with our opacity slider. Let's turn our highlights off for a second. Select our shadows layer and bring the opacity all the way down. I like to start at the bottom because it's easier to see what my effect is doing than starting from 100% opacity and trying to take it away. So start moving our opacity up. Start at about 40% and then we'll turn the layer off, turn it back on. You see how that starts to draw your eyes to the middle of her face? That's the effect that we're looking for. So we'll stop right there on the shadows. Let's turn our highlights back on. Same deal. Let's bring our opacity all the way down. Start cranking it back up. I'm gonna go about 50. Turn them off, turn them on. That looks pretty good. Let's group these two layers together. We'll zoom out a little bit. Here is before and after, before, after. All right, everyone, thanks for kicking it with me today. Make sure you hit that thumbs up if you found something useful in this video. Subscribe for the jug if you haven't already, and share this video with anyone you think needs to plug on some knowledge. And remember, it's all gas, no brakes. Whatever you do it moving. Yeet! We out of here, baby.
I'm recording the smoke. I'll explain exactly what a jug is. Quality over quantity, I can write a booklet. We want shark at Gmail for the book. Until then, I'ma keep cooking without cooking.